first thing I would like to say is that the problem that we're facing is not going to be solved by the criminal justice system. And that's been made clear already. And I think that's one of our big mind shifts we have to make in South Africa, because most people still think when that you have a crime problem that the solution lies with the police and the criminal justice system. But if you look at the research and the data that comes out of it, it's very clear that it's not something that the police can really do much about. So if you consider our murder rate, there were about 15,600 murders last year. That's dropped by 54% since 1994, which is good news. And there's no connection to that shift and anything that we've seen in terms of what's happened in the criminal justice system over that period of time, whether it's been the increase in funding, number of police, arrest rates, or conviction rates. So for the last 10 years, the police have increased the number of arrests by 500,000 people. So they arrested 1.6 million people last year, and more than half of those arrests, over 800,000, were crimes less serious than shoplifting. The conviction rate has dropped by 22% over the last 10 years. There are 91,000 less convictions last year than there were 10 years ago. But the budget for the criminal justice system has increased dramatically. It's increased on average by about 14% per year, each year for the last 10 years. So you can see that it's not about the criminal justice system. Having said that, the criminal justice system is very important, but I'm going to talk a bit about that in a few minutes. But just to look at what we're dealing with. So our murder rate is about 4.5 times the international global average of about 7 murders per 100,000. Ours is around 31 murders per 100,000. And it's mainly a male victim problem. In other words, for every 1 woman that is murdered, 6 men are murdered. And that's down a bit from about 1 to 8 about 3 or 4 years ago. So there were about 12,000, just over 12,000 men murdered last year, and just over 2,000 women murdered last year. 57% of those women that were murdered by their intimate partners, their relatives and their boyfriends. 57%, that's almost 1,200 murders, were committed by the person closest to them. Not much the police can do there except arrest the perpetrator once the murder's taken place. When it comes to rape, we see, we can only really compare the last 3 to 4 years because of the Sexual Offences Act coming to play and redefining rape, so the statistical basis changes. But there were about 48,000 rapes last year. In the previous 2 years, it was about 49,000. So it's really kind of stayed quite consistent. There's about another 7,000 sexual assaults, which are not full rape, but attempted rape. So we're looking at about 55,000 sexual assaults reported to the police last year. The police themselves say that they probably receive 1 in 3 cases that have actually occurred. But we've seen research coming from various organizations, including the medical research centers and others, that put it at 1 in 9 or 1 in 11. And some very localized community-based research showing in some communities 1 in 20 rapes gets reported. So the police aren't going to be able to do something about something they don't know about. Medical Research Center Rachel Duke's very interesting research done in 2009 in 3 different provinces showed that anywhere between 27%, that's pretty much 1 in 4, and 36%, about 1 in 3 men admitted to having forced a woman to have sex with them at some point in their lives. 3 out of 4 of these men said this happened before they were the age of 20. 1 in 8 had been arrested or had received any kind of engagement with the police. So that's what the statistics tell us, and they tell us that this is not something that the criminal justice system can fight. It's really about the issues that have been raised previously. But talking about the criminal justice system, it's not something the criminal justice system can ignore, because you have to have a place that if perpetrators are doing this and people are being victimized, that there's a place they can go to and that the rule of law can be instilled. So we do see a lot of people, many thousands of people being arrested for rape each year. And recently we've seen that there's, of the cases that are eventually getting before court, the conviction rate is around 70%. So what that means is that by the time the prosecutors decide they will prosecute a case that comes to them from the police, there's a good chance they're going to get a conviction.